Greetings with lovers everywhere. I'm E-Train and welcome back to E-Train Talks. And this week, it happens to be National Library Week. It's a time of the year where we celebrate and highlight the valuable roles librarians, libraries themselves, and library workers play in transforming lives and strengthening our communities. And because I'm such a huge supporter and lover of libraries, because, they're awesome, and the librarians who devote their days to sharing love of stories, I am so excited to introduce today's guest, who just so happens to be an amazing school librarian, book blogger, popular YouTube game show co host, that's a mouthful, and a true book hero. You may know her as the fun and lively co host of the popular and sensational YouTube show Author Fan Face Off with Steve Shankin, or maybe you know her as the Leaping Librarian, or maybe from her Sydney Taylor Schmooze book reviews, or the many other book-loving events and programs she's involved with. Who am I talking about? Well, I am talking about the one and only Leaping Librarian extraordinaire, Stacey Ratner. Thanks so much for
Oh
joining
my
me.
goodness. What a wonderful introduction. My gosh. Thank you, E. That was amazing. And like I told you before we got on air, you're famous YouTuber and book lover. And so I'm a little bit nervous about being in your presence today. So thank you for having me to represent librarians and librarianship. So I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to join me, and you should not be nervous at all because I mean, maybe this will add more pressure or less, but I'm sure everyone is just so excited that you're here today. And we all cannot wait to hear more about your story and how you got involved in the book loving world in the first place. So I think that's a great segue into the first question.
Okay.
So, as a lover of stories, spending your days in a library, that sounds like a dream come true. Have you always been an avid reader? And at one point, did you decide that you wanted to work around books?
Well, it's a very different question. So I'll start with the first part. I have always loved books, love reading, and I have some wonderful memories of going to the bookstore with my mom before to stock up on books for the summer, to go to sleepaway camp and we would go to Maine for the summer. And I just remember I could still visualize the aisles of the bookstore and getting all the paperback books. So that's an early memory. And then I wasn't always a librarian, and this is a second career for me. And when I was looking to change careers, I was at a party, and mutual friends of the friend who was having the party, I didn't know her. I was just talking to her and saying, I want to be a fourth grade teacher. I think I want to switch careers and I want to go back to school to be a fourth grade teacher. And she was a third grade teacher, and she said, you know what, you should try going back to school to be a librarian. I hear it's the greatest job in the building. And I'm like, oh, consider it. And then there was like a graduate school open house the next weekend at a local, or I think it might have been that Monday. And I went, and one thing led to another, and I was signed up for a class the next January. So shout out to Val, who is my sung hero and changed my life by just saying, should try to go see about librarianship. So that's how I got there. And people are always surprised it wasn't my first career, because it feels like it was meant to be. And I feel like I could have always been a librarian.
What was your career before that?
I was also in education. I have a master's in health education, and I worked for Planned Parenthood for 9 years, and I love that. I worked with teens, but it was just time to, I was ready to move on, and yeah.
Well, the book loving world is so glad that you did move on, and I'm sure those teens were kind of sad that you moved on. So it's kind of a mixed feelings, but I'm sure anybody who loves books is so happy that you wound up in this profession. And I mean, as a lover of stories, it sounds like the dream job.
It definitely is the dream job. I actually wish I had more time to read. I'm so busy working with the kids and doing teaching that and then I don't come home and I'm exhausted. But so it's always like I take a break when we have school breaks. We had one just a couple weeks ago, and it's nice to be able to catch up on the reading. And I just wish I had more time to read. I think people think that we can read all the time, but there's other things that we have to do as well.
Yeah. Well, being a librarian, it's just from my experience, I mean, of course, I'm not a librarian, but seeing the librarians in my school and in the community, it's kind of a trying task, I guess you could say, because not only is your job to give books to people and you're like kind of there checking out stories online and then kind of adding them to the library, but you're also librarians are kind of you have parents, you have teachers sometimes, but a lot of the time for some kids, it's librarians who really are the ones that set the foundation for book love in kids' lives. So it sounds like a really tough but rewarding job as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we are, there's teachers who love reading and they're in the building and teachers, but we're like on the pulse of we're always like one or two steps or four steps ahead to know what's the new book, and then we can get kids excited about all of the new literature that's coming out. And I love doing that and getting them excited about authors and making authors and illustrators rock stars. And teachers unfortunately have lots of things to
Yeah.
do and have lots on their plate. And so as a librarian, we can support the teachers, but then we can also do other things. I like to say that we're kind of like the cupcakes and rainbows of the building, because and we're also like like a grandparent, because it's just so great, like coming to the library. And we really are giving, not that what happens in the classroom isn't great. It's just a different kind of great.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know.
would would you consider, I guess, inspiring kids to read your favorite part of your job, or is there kind of something else about just librarianship that really kind of keeps you coming back?
Ooh, good question. I mean, I love having a kid come back to me and say, I love this book, or I can't stop reading this book that you recommended. Another one of my passions is introducing kids to authors and illustrators in person. And I've been doing, like back when it was Skype, like for a long time have introduced kids to authors and illustrators over virtual, way before everybody was doing virtual things. And that's always an amazing thing. Like as you know, like you see somebody in person online, even though you can't touch them and then they're not three-dimensional, they're there and they're giving you the attention and they know who you are. So I love that. We see that, as soon as like you see somebody is in the room, or you're ready to the host is ready to enter you in the room, and then we all scream. I mean, we just had a Google Meet. We read Dan Santat's newest graphic novel, which I highly
Mm.
recommend. And I read that with a morning book club before school. And then we had a Google Meet with him after school with some Fanta. And he logged on and we were like, it's it's really great to see the kids' faces light up when they're meeting somebody.
My next question for you is kind of a dive into a more, I guess you could say, a really relevant topic at the moment. So, book banning. I mean, we've all kind of heard of what's going on in places like Florida, Texas, or really all over the country, because it doesn't really matter whether there's some places where it happens more, but there's still book banning or at least censorship in loads of places, no matter if you're a blue, red, or I'm not going to get into politics. Anyway,
No,
books with themes like LGBTQ plus, combating racism or anti-Semitism, and just many other kinds of stories are being taken off the bookshelves in our country and around the world. And I'm curious to know if you've experienced anything related to book banning or censorship firsthand, and what are your thoughts on book banning?
uh, I don't even want to go into it, but I've been very, very fortunate that I haven't had any experience with anything yet. And I feel like I'm very, very lucky. I have a very supportive administrative team within my building and within my small district, that I have the support, that if anything happened, or if anyone approached about wanting a book removed from our shelves, that they would support me in terms of my collection development policies. That said, it's disturbing and upsetting, and my colleagues across the country and my colleagues within my community and my region here, I mean, they are experiencing some horrible things that it's very upsetting. I was very happy the other day. We had Grandparents' Day, and a grandfather was wearing a very kind of old, you could tell it was very worn in love t-shirt that said, "I read banned books." And I was like, oh my, I can't remember whose grandfather it was, but I wanted to hug him. I might actually have, and just felt the camaraderie to think that someone of an older generation was expressing this shirt and wearing this shirt in our school on Grandparents' Day. I try and be proactive, and I try, and if I feel like I have any books that may have been considered controversial in another school district, in another community, or state or somewhere, or characters that may have that may raise some eyebrows. I invite parents to come in and see my book list and see all that. So I try and take a step ahead, and I just have been very, very lucky. And I know that if anything happened, I have my administrators right on my back and right and supporting me.
Well, before we get into other questions, I'm also curious because there have definitely been some, I guess, like you said, eyebrow upping moments, eyebrow raising moments in recently. And I think one in particular is censoring some of the words, like changing sentences or even whole paragraphs in Roald Dahl's books, for instance. So what are your opinions on kind of, I guess it's not necessarily light censorship, but kind of some censorship that, if not for maybe social media, for instance, it might go under the radar?
Yeah, I feel like, and there's another situation where I think an author was asked to change something for her book in order to be for a certain publisher.
Yeah.
And that was so upsetting, that because this is her story and these are her words, and I feel like we're being disrespectful to the book creators at the time. Now, Roald Dahl is different just because some of the things in his books are we
Yeah.
may not want written these days, but again, it's classic literature, and I hope that that's read with a discussion, and we can still enjoy. Yeah, I mean, take that kind of thing, Little House books. I mean, those are, we don't have time to go have a conversation about that, because yeah, how that works in terms of those books that were written at the time that weren't considered racist or inappropriate for kids. Yeah. What do you do with those books now? And do you have kids reading them now? That's something that we can have a whole podcast about, or a whole Zoom about. Yeah.
I agree. And on a lighter note, I guess you could say.
Phew,
Yeah.
we need some light notes. Yes.
Yeah, we do need some light notes. So let's talk about author fan face-off.
Oh,
So, as many of our viewers might know, you are one of the hosts of the fantastic and truly, I guess you could call it legendary Author Fan Face-Off YouTube
oh.
series. Author Fan Face-Off is an awesome middle grade book game show where famous authors go head to head with super fans on questions from one of the author's best loved books. So the hosts are author Steve Shankin and of course you, Stacy. And I
Oh.
recently heard that you've recorded over 80 episodes across multiple seasons that are kind of working with the end and the beginnings of school years. So can you tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about how this amazing journey began?
Sure. I mean, it was Steve and and Steve's amazing, and I really appreciate him choosing me out of he could have chosen out of dozens of librarians. So um, he gave me a call one day. I remember it was August. I was in this room, and he's like, "I have an idea. I'd like to run it by you." And, okay, and we just kind of morphed it into the way it is now. We were still, he was not doing school visits. There wasn't much still going on after school. So there felt like we had more time. And what could we do with our time? And what could we do to help kids and students get excited about reading? And this idea came up, and even from the very first episode all the way to the 80th episode, they're not that much different. I mean, maybe we've changed the graphics, maybe we've changed, something here and there, but pretty much following the same format. And I think it works. I mean, I miss it. We're busier now. I know Steve was at TLA just this week, and
Mhm.
I've got a lot going on, and he's got new books coming out. So it's different. We were excited to do full seasons 1 and 2, and then when it was like season 3, do we have time? I think you were our first in season 3, and we might have done a few more, but we haven't filmed any in many months, and we really want to. And I think, but it takes a lot. I mean, you've got to reread the book, or and you reading a book differently for all their fan face off. You're like, okay, so they just had a snack. What was that snack? So you're going to take that one snack, Cheetos, and then that's the question. And so it's which when you're reading for pleasure, it's a little bit different. But yeah, I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to do author fan face off with Steve.
Well, it sounds like such a treat, though I also understand how busy life can get and how sometimes, I mean, there are some books that I certainly like to reread, but there are others that aren't necessarily rereadable, if that's a word. There are some that, I mean, I've read like, for instance, Starfish by Lisa Phipps like 10 times. And then
Oh,
there are some books that like you love them the first time, but I don't want to well, I'm very grateful for all the work that you and Steve put into it and how deep you go into the stories. Like looking at what is this specific bench called on page 173, chapter 27, paragraph 3, line 170,000. So we really appreciate all the work you do.
yeah. And it's funny that you talk about rereading, because before Author Fan Face Off, I refused to read a book a second time. As much as I would love a book, and I just couldn't do it. It's just, there's infinite number of books in the world for me to read, and I just need to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Um, but right now, it's funny because right now I'm rereading a book that I read on my own that we did for Author Fan Face Off, and now I am doing it in a book club. So I'm on my third reading of it, and I have another book that I'm on my second reading of, just because I'm doing a presentation tomorrow about it. So it's it's and you look at something differently when you reread. So I'm kind of like past that now, because some kids like you want to reread a book 10 times, and that's okay, because you find different things every time you read it. You get inspired in a different way when you look at it differently. Oh, I never noticed that before. I didn't see that. And maybe the first time you read it for character, and the second time you're reading it for setting, and the third time a different theme comes up. So it's okay to reread the books, and I have to give myself permission, whether it's for Author Fan Face Off or not now.
You and Steve have had the chance to host so many incredible authors from Stuart Gibbs to James Ponti to Chris Grabenstein, who was actually your first guest, and of
Hmm.
course my challenger, who I my loss to her haunts me to this day, A.S. King. Why did I forget Are You There, God Is Me, Margaret? And
Oh,
then there's also people like Jason Reynolds, Max Brallier, who wrote the Last Kids on Earth series, Sharon M. Draper, and even Kwame Alexander, who just had his The Crossover show released on Disney Plus recently, which I watched in one sitting. It was that good. So
oh
anyway,
my goodness. Ooh.
I'm not usually a binge watcher, so I was a little surprised with myself. Anyway, is there an author that you've met? I know it's gonna be tough to choose just one. I mean, I'll allow you to pick at least at most three. Um,
Oh,
so is there an or a few authors that you've met that have held a special place in your heart?
And I have to say, I was like, I mean, I have two kids, and that's like asking me who's my favorite kid. You know, if you ever ask an author, like, what's your
The
favorite
older
book,
two.
which kids always want to ask, what's that?
It's the older two.
um, so, I just, that's, you can't do that to me. You can't, I can't get on a public show and say, this is my favorite author.
How about
I,
maybe one that's really stuck with you, I guess you could say. That's kind of
from
a
the
bit
show,
more fair.
yeah, I mean, from the show, even that I mean, I have to say, I was an early, it's funny that you brought up Kwame because I was an early fan of the crossover back in the summer of 2014, like only a few months after it got out. And then when I do a Newberry project with my fifth graders, and we were all over it, and so Kwame and I developed a friendship, and we've been friends ever since. And so he holds a special place in my heart. Same thing, Steve holds a special place in my heart. They all do. I could probably tell you a personal story about everybody. One of the most remarkable, um, and even Steve's episode is with somebody who I think he read his bomb like multiple times. He was amazing. He was pretty amazing. So that was a great episode to put Steve on the opposite end there. Um, Pablo Cartaya, he holds a special place in my heart because we had a Google Meet with him in school after with my small book group. And then when we met with him on Author Fan Face Off, it was just something that there was something very special about that. And again, I don't even know if it made it um, into the show, but it was he's just a amazing human being. You should get in touch with him. Judd Winnix was with a fan from mine who had been a student of mine for many years. We used to send him little videos like, Judd Winnick, you got to come to my school. You got to come to my school. He hasn't yet, but then he stayed on with him for way longer and showing him sketches and things from uh, the newest book that was coming out. So I think we were on with him for like an hour with Chase. Um, so I mean, some of them have made me cry. Some of them we've had some great kids on. The girl who drank the moon, I got that girl because she was from in the kids New York Times had written a review once a month in the New York Times. There's a special section and it says for kids only, adults don't open it up. Um, and she had written a review, and so I did my little librarian research and got a hold of her, and she came on, and that was really cool to have someone who was like a true super fan of the book be on our episode. And yeah, see, I could just spend an hour going on every episode and telling you all of the special things about each person. Um, so it's been a wonderful experience, and I love looking at my bookshelves at school and was like, okay, all their, that person was on the show, that one was on the show, this person's been on the show, and it's just been a really great experience.
Do you kind of so does it do you really kind of say, oh, there's too small of an author? You kind of turn down some author choices some authors who ask because they're not necessarily big enough per se.
Don't think so. I think in the early days we've had, I mean, everybody's work is important, and everyone is contributing to making this a better world, I think. So, no, I mean, I think, maybe now because our time is so, we are much busier that we might say, we might have to reconsider or push it back to another thing. But we would always consider somebody and take
Yeah.
it from there. Yeah.
Well, before I move on to the next question, I have to look back at my bookshelf to see if there's anybody else. Because have you talked to B.B. Alston? I think you have, or, or maybe you,
Mm,
the author of
no,
Amari and the Night Brothers. Or,
I don't think so.
yeah, that'd be a cool one. Maybe the book will like I don't know if you have or not. This
Oh
author.
no, right. No, we haven't. We haven't. Right. I have fans of him. Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Amari.
he'd be a cool one. He's a bit shy at first, but he's a great guy.
Oh, okay.
Um,
That's a good suggestion.
yeah, I think if I can put this book, I'll just put it over here. Don't tell anybody. Um,
You have a lot of books there on your bookshelf. So
I
do you go to
I
the library too?
I do go to the library, though. I get a I it's kind of getting harder now because you don't see, but behind the leap your picture, I have to move the camera. I have a big to be read stack.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I sometimes get some books like some kind of background research books like about some authors from the library, maybe like a couple days before the interview to get kind of I guess like figure out more questions because I try to keep it maybe like 10 to 12 questions. But
Hmm.
like if I've only read one of the person's books or seen like one of their things, then that kind of limit me a little bit. So
Okay.
I read that you are a supporter of diversity and inclusion in books. So I mean you've kind of talked about this a little bit with book banning, but is this true?
Hmm.
And is there anything that you really do to ensure your library obtains books that offer equity, equality, and inclusion?
Yes, this is absolutely true, and it's very important to me. It's kind of one of my missions. I work and live in not a very diverse community, so it's very important for me to have window books
Mhm.
all over my shelves, and I do that. And introducing my students to diverse authors and illustrators as well, in person or virtually. So that's yes, that's how I do it. That's important to me, and I feel like I work at that every day.
Well, it's so important that because librarians are such key piece. I guess you could say pieces in a community because like whether it's a school library or a public library, they're really the foundation of a strong and book-loving community. So you really have that's kind of a huge part that you have to play, especially if you're not in a too diverse community. You need to find a way to ensure that kids have the opportunity to really discover new experience like window and mirror books. Those
Right.
That's a great term that I love because you need to see your kids, of course, need to see themselves in books, but they also need to learn about others' experiences, walk a mile in other people's shoes. So it's great that you
Yeah.
do your part to make sure that no, I guess no kid, no story, no life is left behind.
Right. And you don't even know, that's great. You don't even know if who who some of you, I don't even know what the stories that some of my students have. And so I may be thinking that this is a window book, but it may really be a mirror book for them. So I just want to include all the stories that I can out there, all the different stories that I can out there, and try and put the books in people's hands, and maybe change a life or two while I'm doing it, or at least make a difference somehow.
Author Fan Face Up does a great job of really inclusion, as you said, because there are stories, for instance, from all different kinds of cultures and backgrounds and religions. You have stories like Thirst with
Mhm.
and two El Defo, and then you also have Wonder or the crossover or all these stories that really tackle topics like race, but also kind of middle school as a whole, because middle school, in the past week, I cannot even begin. It would take me like 2 hours to explain all the drama in just sixth grade from middle school that's happened this week. So middle grade
Oh
needs to be
no.
shared. Like,
Right, right.
so my next question for you. So you were talking about how you don't have a ton of time to read, but you do find breaks every once in a while. So I can't let you go without asking, what are you currently reading? Or rereading in a sense.
Okay. Well, I have, here's my, so we talked about rereading, right? So my first book that I'm rereading is Free
Oh,
Water. This won the Newbery Award, because tomorrow is a Caldecott Newbery tea, and I'm doing a presentation on this. So I wanted to reread it and just love it up some more. So that's one. And then I'm rereading From the
oh,
Desk of
I
Zoe
love that
Washington. This
book.
is the one for the third time, and we had her on Author Fan Face Off. And this is I'm doing this with a fourth grade book group, and we're loving it up again. I'm loving it up again for the third time. And I want to shout out to this because this book comes out on Tuesday, and I just finished it. And this is a little bit for my. I grew up in Queens, New York, and this book takes place in the Bronx and Manhattan, and it just gives me. It's a graphic novel about a girl who's in eighth grade, and she wants to go to and they have to take exams to go into high school, to go into either special Catholic high school, but she wants to really go to this special art school, the LaGuardia, which is and she wants to go there for art. And I actually, for like basically a half a minute, considered going to LaGuardia, applying to LaGuardia for dance when I was in eighth grade. So I really like that book. And then I am very excited to start listening to Mary Louise Kelly's memoir. She is um, a host of All Things Considered, and I'm kind of in a memoir phase right now. So I listened
Same.
to Ari Shapiro's, who also is on All Things Considered, and um, super excited about Mary Louise Kelly. So I have to like get into the right spot and just listen to the audio. So, and then, oh, these two too. These just came in the mail. And I love Anne Braden, so I'm really excited about this one too. But these don't come out till September. Oh, this one comes out in May, and this comes out in September. And this is in verse, and my kids love books in verse.
Too.
So that's like the top of the pile. And yeah, what are you reading right now?
It's a good question. I just finished It Happened on Saturday by Sydney Dunlap. It's a really interesting middle grade book because it really tackles a topic that I've never really seen discussed. It talks about human trafficking and like I guess making so the main character is Julia. She's in eighth grade, and she's really going through some friendship problems and family issues, and she kind of feels alone, isolated. And when she posts a selfie of herself, like after getting a makeover, there's this weirdo named Tyler_G on some social media platform that is not named in the story. So they send private message. So Tyler sends private messages, and Julia kind of had this moral battle. Like, she knows her mom has always told her you should never message people online, strangers at that. But she kind of she needs someone to talk to, and she doesn't think that this could really go bad. They're probably just some kid in the neighborhood or in the community, but Tyler is anything but that. So I don't want to spoil it.
Mm.
But and I'm also sharing a book review soon, which is kind of the exact same words as that. Um,
Oh, okay.
so yeah, it's a lovely story, and I have quite a tall to be read pile, so I'm slowly inching my way down, and that's kind of what I'm
Yeah,
reading.
can you show me some of them? Can you
Oh,
show me some of them?
yeah, sure. I gotta point there's some great ones over there. I'm also reading, I just finished Not an Easy Win. We just talked about Free Water and Amina jumped on, which was a surprise.
Oh,
Like, because she messaged
is
me.
that on? Is there something?
So, Free Water, oh, it's not on any like,
Do you have a video of,
no,
did
I,
you already have that or is that
yeah,
coming up?
the Free Water book club, it happened last month, but tomorrow is actually the book club and it's still you're able to sign up. It's although I don't think you can read the book in a day. But yeah, that's my to be read pile. There's also some books that I've already read in there, so I guess it also is TBR, to be reviewed pile.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I can see Falling Short, right? Is that in there? Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that one. I can't see some of the other ones, but
Yeah. It's a
yeah, we always have these crazy sized piles of books to read. And yeah, I just there's not enough time.
it's time for the final question of the interview, the question I've asked every single person I've ever interviewed. If you could be
Oh
or if you
boy.
could meet, I know the pressure's building, the drum roll's coming on. If you could be or if you could meet any literary character, it could be your favorite author or your favorite character in any story, whether nonfiction or fiction. Who would it be and why?
So is this a character or is it an
It
author?
could be either one
Or
or both if you want.
okay. And again, what's that?
So it could be either your favorite author.
Um, and is it, I think by now you might know after we've been talking for about 45 minutes that I can't make a decision. So
Decisions are tough.
um somebody that I would really right, someone that I would really, really love to meet, and she didn't come up in our conversation, is Judy Blume. I mean, I think she wrote the Mirror books for me when I was younger, and she really had an impact on my life.
I saw that Are You There, Goddess Me Margaret, the movie is coming out very soon. So are you going to be watching that in the theaters?
Oh, yes, definitely. And there's documentary. I mean, yes, Judy Blume is it's sort of been quiet for like 30 years and now she's back and there's been articles about why and it's all good.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Stacy. It has been such a treat. It has been so much fun because I love talking to other book lovers. And I think it's just so amazing to be able to spend your days sharing your passion with others, whether it's through conferences, presentations, librarianship, or a YouTube channel like the Author Fan Face Off. It's so important and inspiring to spread the word about literacy and especially middle grade books. For kids like me who really need that window and that mirror, we need the combination. Somebody should make a song called about window and mirror books. That would be a great song. Windows and Mirrors, the music video.
Oh, oh, I
Anyway,
thought you were going to say the musical. Yeah.
oh, that would be good too.
Yeah.
You're most definitely a
And there
book.
you go.
Yeah, you're
Dancing books and stuff. Yeah.
that would be a lot of. If you're a producer or somebody watching the show, you got to make that happen. And we need
Right.
producer credits.
Right.
It all started here on the
There
Each
you
One
go.
Talks podcast, and it became an internationally award-winning musical, Windows and Mirrors, coming soon to theaters near you.
Mm. I wish you the best of luck. You're doing a great job. You're getting books in the hands of kids. That's awesome. You're bringing authors to kids. I saw your Stuart Gibbs. That was amazing. And I sure you have other things going on. So I enjoy following you and looking forward to, like I say, I knew him when. So thank you. Thanks for inviting me. And I look forward to meeting you in person someday, maybe.
Everybody watching or listening or however you're viewing this, keep reading and also check out Author Fan Face Off because you will discover your next favorite read and you'll also, I mean, who doesn't like a good game show? So keep on
Good.
reading, everybody, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
All right. Thank you.